the lens in and out. Zooming
True.
in and out will suck dust in. They should come up with some kind of system, some kind of filter inside the lens that filters the dust out when you zoom in and out. Lens in and out. Zooming in.
The new
And also
Nikon
charge them a
camera
couple
has
bucks.
a sensor cover when you change lens. You can actually, it's a mirrorless, but it's got a sensor cover that you can put into place when you change your lens.
How does that work?
I don't know. The camera's just been released.
Well, it's just like a shutter. It's just that it's not a shutter. It's just a cover that as soon as you turn the camera on, it closes if you have a lens off, and if you have a lens on it, then it will open up as soon as you want to take a picture. So, okay, anybody that wants to join the panel, please raise your Zoom hand and we will bring you on in. Otherwise, we're going to be getting started. Not too bad this morning.
I just want to say for any Menominee Falls Camera Club people, you can still get your All Creatures Great and Small in today. I'll be working on the newsletter probably starting later tonight and tomorrow. So if you've got, I'll even accept them up until noon tomorrow. Their pictures are easy to manipulate and put into the newsletter. So
Yep. Okay.
get those in.
So let's get started here this morning. We're running a little late, but we got 20 people. That's pretty good for a Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I cooked dressing for the first time in my life and it actually sort of worked. So it was different for us. But I thought we'd start off today with, does anybody have any neat things that they're buying from Black Friday? We got Cyber Monday coming up. I know I filled in on a couple plugins that I needed to update that saved a bunch of money on. So anybody in the group here?
Ian's not here, right? Otherwise, I'd ask him how his new computer, his new laptop was. I think he should have it by now.
Yeah, he was getting a new MacBook Pro with the new Macs.
I'm thinking about getting
Stuff.
some training video, a couple of training videos.
Yeah, Creative Live runs some specials. I didn't look at their specials lately. I belong to Kelby One, so my problem is I never watched the videos lately. I don't think my membership's always up at this time of year because I always renew during Thanksgiving because it's cheaper. I know my renewal's coming.
I've gotten videos from Creative Live that I haven't even watched yet. I got them while they were on sale, and then they sit on my computer. But I've been looking at some of, I've got some of Sean Bagshaw's videos for luminosity masks, and they're old, and he's got some new ones I think I'm going to go purchase this weekend.
Yeah, I've got a few things that I keep looking at. Let me show, let me see here. I'm not organized this morning. It's sort of, it's everybody else fun getting started here. Let's see, that's on desktop 3. So I found a couple of specials that people might be interested in. DxO has 50% off on all of their software. I don't use anything from DxO other than Nik filters, and they've got it at 50% off right now. And actually, if you already own a previous version, it's like $39, I believe, for the Nik filters. I'm finding that that's the one that I use the most out of any of the plugins, and I keep going back to it. Mainly the color effects with the detail extractor for me is my favorite filter, along with brilliance and warmth. But so that's a nice deal with 50% off, and that goes through I think Monday. Luminar, you can get the new Luminar Neo for $49, and I believe and that's for, they've even gone now to 1 seat, or if you want 2 seats, I believe it goes up to $55. Neo is just has more AI in it and seems to work. Gonna be working. I don't, it's not out yet. I think it's coming in a week or two. So you can get that for a good 30–40% off if you're looking to get into that one. And then they have a course, Creative Photo Editing Techniques, that probably teaches you how to use it. That comes free. Then they got a ton of plugins at pretty low rates if you're looking for plugins, or even the X membership, which I don't remember what that even gets you anymore. They keep changing all these things so much that I'm finding that I'm settling down into just a couple of plugins. And for me, it's going to be Lightroom, Photoshop, and Nik Filters, which has been my old standby, and it seems to always work. I do have Luminar AI and Luminar 4, so I'm not planning to upgrade to the new Luminar. I used to upgrade to all of these so I could help other people out with it, but it's just getting too expensive to keep doing that every year. On1 Photo Raw, you can get their upgrade to 2022 for $79.99. Or you can buy, if you don't have it at all, it's $100. They do also have a yearly subscription rate for it, which for $89.99 you save a whole $10, and you can subscribe to it. I'd still recommend buying the ones where it's not a subscription. So I'm just going to stay with Photo Raw 2021. The new features in the new Photo Raw don't seem to do a whole lot for me. So, and like I said, it's starting to get expensive every year to upgrade these things.
I don't
And
think it's
last-
just the expense of upgrading, Jeff. I think also
Yeah.
it's the time that we have to, I mean, there are so many changes that happen in some of these things. And if you've got like 4 or 5 different plugins and stuff, it's hard to keep on top of it, much less
Yeah.
the software programs. Just constantly like, what should I do next? You know, and you can't just set aside 5 or 10 minutes anymore.
No, they're supposed to speed your workflow up, but you need to delve into them so deep to be able to understand how they work. So if you specialize in one, that seems to be the best. So I'm specializing with Nik Filters because that was the first one I started with. And I like a couple of the features in it so much. The Luminar, I like some of the special effects that they have, and that's why I'll keep Luminar AI going. But if I want to do real special effects, I now use Boris Filters, which has a whole ton of special effects. They didn't put that one on sale, but and that's not a cheap one either.
I like the on one aspect of enlarging the pixels. They're, I can't even think, it used to be genuine fractals where you can, pretty much easier than the degradation that happens in Photoshop, use that. So that's what draws me towards the on one. Plus they're getting a whole lot more different scenes and stuff like that too. So it's kind of fun to experiment with them sometime, but the enlarging without degradation is kind of key for me, although I don't do it a lot, but still it's nice to know.
Yeah, and for me, I used to use the on one stuff, and then I switched over to the Topaz Gigapixel, which does the same thing, but it's a standalone program, which works pretty well. And then I like Topaz's denoise for really heavy noise, mainly for my Milky Way stuff and that. And they've got 60% off right now. And I don't know. I don't use the Sharpen AI. I hear it's pretty good, but I've found I didn't need that, and I don't even use denoise and Gigapixel that often. But when I need Gigapixel, I usually really need it bad.
Okay. I forgot I have some Topaz, but I must have a suite of things or something. So I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, they've got this section that you can buy as a whole big package, or you can buy them individually, which is sort of nice. They also have one for video. If you end up doing video, it has ways to clean up and fix up your video shoots. So that one is sort of a nice one, but that's also, well, right now it's a $300 program normally, and they've got it for $100, which I'm still trying to decide because I'm getting into videos so much. But
hey, Jeff, can you promote Jim Grosky to the panelists? I tried, but apparently it's not letting me do that part.
Oh, I just lost him. Oh, I think did he come in?
Because he's got a Q&A he put in there.
Yeah. Oh, there he is. He just dropped down.
Maybe he went out and came back in again.
Yeah, sometimes those names jump all over the place. But so those are the ones that I sort of follow. Good morning, Jim.
Well, good morning. I wanted to make a couple of comments about On One. I did get the On One 2022, and they do have a denoise in there, which is pretty good, and it works on raw photos. Well, I shouldn't say just raw, but it loves raw photos, which is nice because then you can still do adjustments to it really easily later on, which I like because it's not applied until later. But the one thing I wanted to mention, On One, I think, is really trying to become its own product, and I don't think it liked the idea that it was sharing stuff with, like, for instance, a lot of us start out in Lightroom and then we use it as a plugin. Now it allows you to do that, but it's not, they won't guarantee that it's going to work correctly if you use it that way. Now I've been using it that way, but they want you to buy these individual plugin modules rather than use the big program. And so it used to be that, you could start in Lightroom, go out to On One, make a bunch of adjustments, send it back to your Lightroom. And then if you realized you wanted to edit those adjustments, you could go back into On One. Well, that feature went away for a little while, but it's back. But you have to use now your On1 as an external editor, and you have to go into it as an external editor. Otherwise, it doesn't work correctly. So it still will do that. But
Yeah,
again, it's
you're
not
right.
guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that it will work, but it does work.
Yeah,
They're kind of turning the tables a little bit, Jim, like you were saying. So you can actually use, you can make it if you start in on one, you can make a round trip for Luminar now too. So I think they're really making a push to kind of overtake Lightroom in that respect. I don't think that'll ever happen, but it's still a great editor. But I think you're absolutely right in what you're saying there.
Yeah, and I mean, I really like the program. Some of the sharpening and their vignette is probably the best that I've ever seen, because when it vignettes, it allows some of the bright stuff to come through. So it doesn't look exactly like a normal vignette. There's some really nice things it does, but they are making it more difficult. And I don't know if the next generation will be even harder to use as a plugin. But it's for those of us who've been in Lightroom, we're not going to take our entire library and move it over. So I don't know if this is a very wise decision on their part, which is too bad.
yeah, you can see it. Here's their website, and you've got the Photo Raw one for a standalone editor now, and now they've got the plugins. And
Yeah, I mean they've had plugins for a few years now, so that's not brand new
Yeah,
to them. But
they did it, but they didn't charge extra for them. They came with it. Now you look at it, and like their noise program is $70, and their effects is the
and that's
these are all
interesting
the
because
same as what's in the whole standalone.
right. And Effects was actually the first product I used from On One years ago, and that's what kind of got me started down the road with On One. And I guess I got a free version of that, and it does some cool things. But that's interesting now that they're charging you for it again.
Yeah, and the resize, which
Right, what
when
Dylan
they
pointed
first
out
started
there,
out, that
right,
was one
that
of
was-
the best resize programs
yeah,
around.
that was what On One was before it became On One, right?
Right. And the portrait one, that I had bought a couple times as a standalone, and then they incorporated it into the Photo Raw.
Mhm.
And then I haven't used their HDR in a long time. But yeah, and you got their bundle price for $150 for the whole thing, which pretty much the same as their standalone. I gotta admit, I didn't check this out too much because I'm happy with the ways I'm doing it myself. But it's always, I'm always interested to see how other people are doing this, because you never know, somebody maybe has a better way to do it. But yeah, it's funny that On One is going the opposite route that it used to be. But their effect stuff was always pretty decent. Like I said, I like the resize I used to use, but they were the only ones that had a resize for the longest time. And the portrait one really helped when I was doing a lot of senior portraits, and that their portrait section was always really good. Gotta admit, I never really used their HDR. But you got a day and 15 hours if you want it for On One. So yeah, thanks, Jim, because I forgot that they even had the separate ones, and I hadn't checked into that part. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so far I haven't had any trouble going back and forth. But again, I do know they've told me they won't support that you're doing that. So they're really sort of asking you to go to the effects And when I did write them, they had, for those people who were, I must have been complaining, they had a special price that you could get all of the plugins. So they reduced them substantially just so that they figured, well, maybe you didn't know that that's the way they were going, and they gave them to you really cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, they keep doing a lot of that stuff, and it's interesting how they've done it, and it's funny, we keep going back and forth these different ways, and maybe On1's gonna get it right, but I'm happy with their 2021, and it works perfectly fine with Lightroom and Photoshop. So I have no idea 2022, like I said. I'm not really looking to update it because I don't have too much. Oh, the On1 resize compared to the new Photoshop one. I don't know. Anybody use resize in On1 and tried it? I haven't actually tried that one. I would imagine it will do as good of job or slightly better. Photoshop's resize with the new version of it works pretty well. I actually found that Gigapixel from Topaz does a really good job at resizing stuff when you, especially if you've got a small, if you really crop small. But depending on my workflow, I tend to go back and forth between it, between the two. So,
I use the resize because I never know how I'm going to get these photos, what size they're going to be. You know, I get them
Yeah.
from 300 DPI to, you know, the 72. And usually for print, I like to do around 200. And then that's just the way I've always done it since, you know, when I was in publishing. And that's a hard kind of thing that I usually, my go-to, it's hard to break. So I usually try to resize all the pictures so that they're at least 200 DPI, and that sometimes that's not enough for some of the smaller ones. But I've been very happy with the way resize works in On1 because it's pretty simple. You just tell it what you want and what size you want, and
yeah.
you push a button, and that's my kind of tool.
Yep. No, and like I said, I used to use resize. Now I use Gigapixel, Topaz Gigapixel. Just found that it did slightly better, slightly sharper results. And I still use Photoshop, depending on which way I'm working at the time. But they all work. And now that Lightroom has it built in, I sort of like how the Lightroom version works for getting bigger sizes. But
It sounds
Yeah.
like
they all seem to work.
two different things here, though. The resizing for printing or for the web is usually, it's not resizing, or what do you call it? The Gigapixel, is it Gigapixel? They actually enlarge in the enhance, the new enhance in Lightroom enlarges the photo and supposedly increases the quality of the picture. But when you're sizing it for printing or for showing on the web for saving to a JPEG, that's not usually recalculating the image itself as far as enhancing the image. Marty, I know you know a lot about that. You might want to speak to that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, you know, sometimes, to be honest, I think this whole resizing thing, we almost get too carried away with, because let's face it, most of the time we're resizing not for prints, but we're resizing to show on screen. And
Right.
you know, these programs can do some amazing things, but do we really need to do that for screen replication? I mean, if I agree, if you're doing prints and the bigger the print, the more important it is. You know, if you're printing a 4x6, you know, you're not working with that much information to begin with. You just don't need to make that file any bigger than it already is. But I don't know. I mean, they all serve their purpose, I guess. But I guess we all have to figure out at what point do we really need to incorporate it.
Mine is
Yeah.
just an old habits die hard situation. And, you know, for so many years I worked with printed, you know, where photos were on some sort of substrate, whether it was paper or canvas or something like that. So it was a lot more important. But on-screen viewing, 72 DPI is fine. But I don't, you know, for things that I print out or give as gifts, that's where I have to make that distinction. And I'm not about to go, well, I wonder if 72 DPI will work for this. So I fall back. I'm old dog, new tricks. Takes longer, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you know, and I think with some of this comes out of, okay, if you're going to do a screenshot and you pull off a low res image from somewhere, and then, yeah, you need to use it bigger. But, you know, if people are sending you even smartphone camera pictures today, files are huge. I mean,
Yeah.
they're big enough to do most things we got to do. So I don't know. I think they're great programs, but I just think that they don't need to be used every time you work with an image.
Yeah,
And it depends upon how the person works. I mean, you know, and that's true, how much time they want to spend doing some of those things too. Because even if the files are large, reducing them still makes it a big file. And I have a limitation for sending, you know, 6, 7, 8 page newsletters that I want to be cognizant of. So it's hard, you know, if I were starting
Right.
over.
Because, you know, you get your newsletter overall file size too big, and then, you know, it's hard to email, it's hard to open up on the other end.
Yeah.
I will say that I've found a really good online PDF resizer that doesn't degrade images, but it brings, like, let's say it's an 11 meg PDF file. It'll bring it down to closer to a meg, and you can't tell the difference on it. So there are certainly ways around that as well, but you do have to start with good size images in a newsletter to get them to look good.
Well, Acrobat will reduce the size of the PDF
Yeah, but
too.
that's right. But there's an Adobe program, and I'm anti-Adobe, so you got to keep that in mind.
Okay, let me write that down. Duly noted now. You're talking to someone who buys the entire freaking suite, you know. So.
And that's great. I mean, you know,
somebody's got to, yeah.
Exactly. I don't hold it against people. It's just that myself, I'm just not an Adobe person.
Okay, Marty. No Adobe. Okay.
Well, and that's good, because I probably should find out that program, because we can pass that on to a couple people that I know are doing newsletters, and I've always had to take the InDesign files that I create for newsletters and shrink it down in half to be able to email it out, and even to put it on the website. Sometimes it just gets too big. The PSA chapter newsletter sometimes got to 15 to 20 megabytes in file size. And then I would use Adobe Acrobat to shrink it down to about 4 or 5 megabytes. And it did a decent enough job, but always looking, and I know we have a new newsletter person there, and she's going to have that same problem. So
yeah, so I just put a link to it in the chat.
Okay, great, because that could be handy.
And actually, they do not just and I haven't really tried it for much else in PDFs, but they actually do it for a lot of different file formats. And I think they're probably having a sale. But as you can see, you know, you can convert a PDF to a Word document, a Word to a PDF, PDF to a JPEG, JPEG to a PDF. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do with this program.
Yeah.
And it's just a free online program.
Wow.
Thank you. I already saved the website to that.
Yeah, no, that really would be handy because it's
Thank you. I'm
same-
even gonna look into that. Yeah.
same thing that Adobe Acrobat can do, but yeah, if it's free, that I'll definitely pass that on to the newsletter person. Because sometimes these newsletters, when we get to 25 and 30 pages and they're full of photos,
They're
they're
huge.
definitely is worth shrinking
They
down.
don't travel. They don't travel well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even loading
And
them
that-
onto a website, it still takes a long time to download them from the website then. So,
right.
you know,
Right. So I try to shrink them down to make them something a little, easier to use and quicker for download because you don't need it quite that big. I'd like to start out with a bigger newsletter because shrinking it down never hurts and it gives you the quality that you need. But back sort of to the gigapixel, where I end up using it is I get a lot of stuff for Youth Showcase for PSA, and those students never follow the file size. And I've gotten stuff that's been like 500 kilobytes in size, and I need to get a 4x6 print out of that. So,
all right. And I think, Jeff, that's exactly where its strengths are.
yeah,
You know, I mean, if we're starting out with a 20 or 25 meg file out of our camera and you've worked it through Photoshop or Lightroom or something, and now you're up to a 40 megabyte file, well, if you don't have enough information to work with there to send it to print without having to send it through a resizer, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, right.
Well,
Yeah,
Phyllis
usually
in the chat is mentioning that she's resizing prints 30 by 40 inches. So I opened my Photoshop and opened one of my raw files out of my camera. And the largest that I can print with, I have my camera set to just to raw, to the maximum size for the raw. And I can print a 22.4 by 14.9 at 300 pixels per inch, which is what I usually print for, higher quality, larger prints. And
but
so
you're not printing that yourself, Trevor. You're sending that to a lab to be printed, correct?
no, I print myself.
You are, okay.
I can print up to, my printer will print up to 17 inches by however long. I haven't really tried a really, really wide file that's large like that, but I typically print like up to 18 inches, 12 by 18, for example, is a common one. But if I want to print larger than what my raw file will do, then I will have to use Gigapixel or something, which I haven't used yet. Maybe I should buy it over the weekend when it's cheap and try it. But I would have, you're
Yeah.
right, I would have to send it out if I wanted to get that large.
Yeah, there's two options with that. Certainly Gigapixel works great because I used to print 24 by 30s and I could print that from just about any size file using Gigapixel or even Photoshop. There's a trick with Photoshop that if you really want to make it work, and it worked really well in the older versions of Photoshop, is you increase the image size by 10%. And I had an action that I just could keep hitting that action and keep doing it till I got up to the size I needed. But if I'm sending it out to a lab, the nice part is they have their programs will upsize it
Yeah,
without
I
any
was just-
problem.
I was just going to point that out, Jeff. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're sending it to any lab, they're going to upsize that automatically for you because they know on their end what they have to do to make that work. They don't charge you for it. Most people don't even realize that happens, but
Yeah.
they've been doing that for years and years. So that's what do they call that process?
Yeah, I was trying to think of the program that they're using for that, and
Yeah.
it's escaped my memory because I haven't had to worry about it, but their type of printing, it is a whole nother setup, and they have a way to be able to really upsize it quite a bit. Because I've
Right, and
already sent a 6 megapixel file to be made into a 15-foot by 20-foot wallpaper print, and the company did it without any problems. And I had text and people's faces, and when you viewed it at a decent viewing distance, it looked really sharp, and it was just amazing. And I mean, that was quite a while ago, and to do 15-foot by 20-foot from a 6 megapixel file just sort of blows your mind.
right.
But,
And I was going to mention, years and years and years and years and years and years and years ago, I had a picture from a rodeo from my first digital camera, which was the 10D. And as many of you know, not only am I anti Adobe, I'm anti RAW. And so I shoot large fine files. And so I made up a 20 by 30 print from a 10D, ISO 800. It was an evening rodeo. And I made it for a show that our club was showing at. And I brought that in there. And Don Frisk, who those of you know Don, knows he's a very meticulous, very good photographer. He swore up and down there was no way that print was ever shot from a digital camera. And on a 10D, my large fine file was about 2.5 or 3 megs. So that was what I was starting with. By the time I had done with Photoshop, maybe it was 5 or 6. But again, send it to American Color, and they printed it, and you would never know that it came out of that low res of a digital camera. So
yeah, a lot can be done with the right tools, and
Oh, I was
Gigapixel
gonna
certainly
mention,
has
Jeffrey,
its
that
place.
10% method that you were just talking about. I used to use that a lot before they started coming out with all these tools, and it works quite well. But they used to instruct, and I've never tried to go over this, but you could do that up to 3 times. Go 10%, 10%, 10%, and instead of one big jump, do several
Yeah.
jumps at 10%.
Yeah, I used to do it quite a bit more than 3 times, because when I ran my lab, I got stuff from customers that needed a lot of help to get to a size to just print. And so, you had ways. You did it with Photoshop, or you could do it with what On1's Resize was way back. They were one of the first ones that had a decent resizing program. And it was back then really expensive, but worked really well too.
Did it work
So
better
there-
than the 10% method? Have
Yeah.
you found them, they work better?
It worked better depending on the file quality to begin with. So you had both methods that you ended up using to trying to get, and most of the time we were just trying to get to a 16 by 20 and starting with a 1 megapixel file and trying to get up to a 16 by 20 print. So and at that, in those days, that was a big enlargement.
Yeah.
Today it's not as much of a big deal, but
interpolation, Jeff, that's what the process is. Image
Right.
interpolation. Yeah.
yeah, image interpolation, and there were a lot of different ways to do it, and we've come a long way in a short period of time. So so any other programs that somebody suggests purchasing these days? There's a lot of them out there, and we don't always aren't
I'll
always
just say
playing with them.
for Mac users, if you haven't looked into Pixamator Pro, it's a good, inexpensive program, but it does some awesome masking things that are pretty. It takes a lot of work out of the masking process, so that might be one to look at. I want to say it's like a $39, $49 program, and they definitely don't do they have incremental upgrades to it, but it's not anywhere near like some of these other programs that are really pushing out changes upon changes upon changes.
Yeah.
But it's just a good editing program if you're on a Mac. And they make an iPad version of it as well.
Yeah. All the Affinity programs, Affinity Photo and Affinity Publisher and Design are on sale for 30% off. Affinity would be another one that's a great, it's a one-time purchase with them. And it's just like Photoshop. And a lot of people like it. I use it on computers because I have so many computers. I don't have enough licenses for Photoshop. So I use that on my other computers when my licenses run out. And that's a pretty decent deal. Sometimes they even run 50% off, but this time they're only running 30%. So, that's something else that I know of.
Jeff, I see Phyllis has got her hand up. I don't know if it's a question or if she wants to be
She had a
panelist.
question on resizing prints 30 to 40. So on one was good for her. Now she needs to decide if Photoshop will do as well. So
and Paul Mortal says, "My gosh, how many computers do you have?"
I hate to say it. Today I'm running only 2 computers right now, but I have 4 computers total. So running from 2012 all the way up to a 2020 computer. Actually, a 2021, because I have a Mac Mini that I'm using for quite a bit of stuff. When I do Zooms, I've got that screen that I can go to and do things with. So yeah, I'm a techaholic, and I freely admit it.
Hi, my name's Jeff, and I'm a technicolog.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeff. I don't think you're alone in this thing. I'm sitting here with my MacBook Pro, my iMac, and my iPad right in front of me. So I'm working off of 3 computers as we talk here too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and that's not talking about my 2 iPads and my iPhone. So
Yeah, my iPhone is sitting here too. So yeah.
But there's something I found for people that like to build things. I'm gonna see if I can pull this up. It's a company called MakerPipe. I gotta admit, I just ordered some of the basic stuff. And I found it really interesting for building things. I'm going to use it to build a background holder. What it does is it works with conduit pipe, 3/4 inch conduit pipe, and what you're buying are all these pieces to connect the pipe together. And I just bought this kit here where you get 12 of this T1 and some corner ones and ones to run it 4 ways, and then a 45. But for building little structures, and what I'm looking to make is, and I was going to build it out of wood, and this is going to make it easier to hold a 2-foot background paper on a roll that I can just drape down. And I have all sorts of little things that just weren't working well, and I can see and I use a lot of conduit as it is for background paper. And these connectors, it's not real expensive, and it's like a big Tinker Toy set for adults. And I'll let everybody know once I get the stuff to see how well it works, but they've got it at a pretty good price, and you can build a lot of things with it. I know a lot of photographers are using it to build stuff to hold lights and backgrounds and things like that. I was gonna build some of this stuff was gonna hang from a ceiling, but I was running into a problem that I didn't have good beams to connect into to hold the background paper. And I'm going, well, maybe this 3/4 inch conduit is relatively inexpensive and easy to get. So
It's
this is
interesting too
something-
that they're doing this with steel pipe instead of PVC pipe.
yeah, yeah. I would bet you could even do PVC with it if you, it just wouldn't be as strong. But 3/4 inch conduit is easy enough pipe to get. And these
Yeah.
connectors look like they're pretty decent quality.
Well, I think that's the difference because they've got these designed to work with metal pipe, and those aren't going to work too easily with PVC. Although it looks like that blue part there looks almost like a
Yeah.
chunk of PEX, like a PEX pipe instead of a.
Yeah,
Huh.
I'm not sure. It looks like you could do a lot of different stuff, and it looks pretty strong. I mean, I know 3/4 inch conduit is
that table.
fairly strong conduit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And actually you can do a 3/4 inch, and then they also make some kits for 1 inch. I haven't seen much 1 inch conduit, but
No, half and 3/4 are typically your two sizes.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of 1.25 would be the next one up. But so we should all sign up for their free little idea book.
yeah, I picked it up. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I've seen a number of things there. I know one guy that's building a desk and actually a rack for all his video setup, because you could lay that out as a, put a wooden top on, with this as stands, and then hang your video screens and everything to it and design it just the way you need it designed. So it's an interesting idea. I'll let people know how well it actually works when I get it. I figure I got less than $100 into it right now. And they even have a nice little a kit that you can use coffee straws to design your stuff before you build the big one. Yeah, here it is. They call it Maker Pipe Mini. And you're just using little plastic straws, and they send you these little the little parts that are the same parts but in plastic, so that you can create the model before you actually build the full-size one. And what was sort of interesting, first it's only $4 for the parts, but when you buy something, they send you they'll let you get this for free. So it's an interesting way to be able to lay it out and see, is this going to work? And once it works, you can build the full-size one. Now this one looks like they built this out of PVC maybe, and
Or
that's
they painted
just
it,
a
which is
simple.
possible.
Yeah, although they do have, if I go back, they do have, I hate that part on a website. Don't ever put that on a website, those pop-ups. I hate that.
Oh, I know. Actually, the
Um,
funny thing is Google hates them too, and yet everybody uses them.
Yeah, everybody uses them. But here they've got shrink wrap for the legs so that you can actually color it and put this on the legs.
Well,
They
that's
got
probably
end
what we're seeing
caps.
instead of paint. Yeah.
Yeah, they even got the wheels. So, yeah, you annoying little thing. But they came up with everything you need, and I mean, not expensive. These end
No.
caps, I mean, you get 10 of these for $4.20. Most of these parts are $2.75, and this fanciest one for $6, $6.36. So something that's sort of interesting if you tend to try to build stuff, especially I'm that way when I work in my lab, in my studio, I built most of that stuff because I was too cheap to buy ready-made. And we did a lot with wood. I've done a lot with conduit pipe. I mean, conduit pipe is a really cheap way to hold a background paper. My studio right now has a 10-foot piece of 3/4 inch conduit that will hold the large background paper, and I just have it screwed to my ceiling with ropes and pulleys that I can raise and lower it. And it served me well for well over 10 years. And I haven't even had to replace the ropes, and works nice because I can drop any size background that I wanted and just raise it up to the height that I needed. So I've used conduit for quite a few things. I just had never seen these kind of parts. And this is actually relatively new company, so we'll see.
And
how
all
that
American
goes.
made, all
Yep.
American made.
Yep. So something else that I just had run into that I thought, well, maybe people would be interested in, especially if you make stuff. And they've got quite a few different parts. So I'd be curious to see how it works. Anybody have any other interesting things that they've seen? Stuff they want to buy? Camera equipment they're looking to get? Boy, everybody's got everything they want. I'd like the new Nikon Z9, but I can't afford to buy it.
I'd like a laptop, but you know, I think I have to save up a little bit for that, so.
Well, the
Soon.
new Nikon laptops are getting cheaper. Although you can max out their MacBook Pro 16-inch with everything for about $5,000.
It's slightly
it-
less than that, because I've already looked into it, and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
well, could be my last one, you know, so let's just see
that
how
one
that goes.
would actually beat some of the $10,000 Pro computers that were out there that Apple made
Yeah.
a while ago. So
Yeah, God, I
I don't
remember
think-
back in the day. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't think you need to quite spend that kind of money.
No,
So
I'm just pulling up an article here I read recently. Image resizing versus resampling. What's the difference? It kind of goes back to our little bit of earlier conversation here. So let me see if I can get this link to. Let's see. I'll put this in the chat for you guys too. And so I use the app Flipboard, and if you guys have never been on Flipboard, it's really a great conglomerate of information. You can subscribe to all kinds of different things. So I subscribe to photography and Apple and drone stuff and things like that. So it's basically a news aggregator, and it just pulls all these stories in from everywhere. So you run across a lot of interesting things. So this would be,
yeah,
again, going back to that conversation of resizing and all that. Maybe something worth your time to read.
sure. No, be interesting. Well, if we don't have anything else, maybe I'm just going to jump into let me get this cleared out. See if we can. I will go through some of the new stuff in Lightroom. So I can. See how this will work.
I would like to hear, Jeffrey, you talk about a little bit about the masking. I've been using that, And everybody's raving about it, but I'm not happy with it because I can't do with the radial gradients what I did before the upgrade. And that's to create like a radial gradient and then put a luminosity mask on it. And when I've tried that in the with the new feature, it has the luminosity mask. I can't get it just to apply to the gradient itself, even if it's in the same little slot on that panel, on that box. It seems to apply to the whole photo. And I haven't been able to work out how to do it with just
Okay,
applying it to the.
well, let's go into some of that with Lightroom's new masking setup. So it's now this icon to get into the masking stuff. I have yet to figure out, I guess this is the masking icon is what it's called. So, but what's interesting with it is, and this does get a little confusing on how it works, and I'm still actually figuring it out, but I worked with it a lot in the last week or two, and I'm starting to get it figured out. What's nice is that you've got to decide what you want to be masking. So say with this image here, I wanted to do something just with the sky. The first thing I do is select the sky, and you got to give it a second, and it's really gotten to be very good. You can see everything that's shown in this red overlay is what it's masking. So you can see that it got just about everything in. And then if you want to do something more, you can then say you wanted to add a graduated filter to it. You click add, and then you can say either you've got a radial grad or a linear grad. You do the linear grad, and you can now drag that out to wherever you want it. And the nice part is the linear grad is only working off of this mask here. So none of the stuff that was originally in there would be showing. And then you can then change the brightness of it. But as you can see, it's not doing anything with that metal work or the bridge. So if I wanted to, say, warm it up or even change the hue of it, I can do that, and it's not affecting anything other than just the sky, which is the nice part about this new one. Now you do have to watch areas like in here sometimes do not get figured in. Sometimes it does. It sort of does quite a good job of doing it. But you can do quite a bit with the mask. And then if you want to take stuff out, say you didn't want it to do work on something, you can use your brush, or you can use any of these other settings, a linear gradient, a radial mask, or go into the color range or the luminance range to make sure that it also excluded other stuff. But I found that when it does the first step, it worked real well. And I was skipping sometimes that step and just going right into a linear or the radial mask. And I found it's better to actually decide what you want to work on here first and then create the linear or the radial adjustment. So does that help you, Drema, a little bit? Is that
A little
where
bit,
you're
a little
having
bit.
the problem? Because
Still,
they've made it a little more confusing in some ways, but when it actually makes the masks, it really gives you a lot of control, and you can do quite a bit with it. And there's a lot of hidden features inside it as well. So say you wanted to change that linear gradient, you can actually convert it to subtract, or you can invert it. And then you can get it to intersect. I haven't quite figured all this stuff out yet.
yeah, that's the
nice
part
part-
I'm having trouble with. Can I share my screen real quick and show you what I'm
Sure.
talking about? Let me
Sure.
see.
Let me stop mine and go ahead. I think you can share. If you can't, let me know.
Gotta get back to my Lightroom. So can you see my Lightroom here?
Yep.
Okay, I have this mountain and I'm going to put in a radial gradient. Whoops. It's a very large file. Well, this one's not so large, but I was looking for my largest file earlier. So I'm going to put a radial gradient over this, just anywhere in it. And I'm going to drastically increase it just so you can see it. So I'm going to set the exposure way, way up so you can see it. And you can see the radial gradient where it's taking place. So what I want to do is take away the very brightest part of this. So what I'm going to do is subtract a luminosity mask, a luminosity range, and I want to subtract the brightest parts. And this is where I get into trouble. So it then shows me, it's being really slow, this luminance range. So my reaction would be I would move the blacks up, because on the old Lightroom features, that's what I did. I just went into the luminosity mask and moved the dark up, and it only shows the bright. But when I do that here, you can, let me show the overlay. It's not cutting out the darkest parts. It's showing me the darkest parts are red, so that's what it's showing me.
Right.
And so then I thought, well, to get rid of to mask out the whites, the brightest parts, do I go the other way? So I tried that, and then I get this little box, which I'm not sure what that is. But no matter what I seem to do here, it doesn't mask the brightest parts.
Try and grab your rightmost arrow underneath the white part. First,
This one?
re-extend that, move that back out where you had it, all the way out. Yeah, just move that arrow rather than the other arrow. Don't move the dark arrow. See if that works for you.
Well, if I move that down, see, it's now brightening the red is, the overlay of the mask is getting larger, you see? Well, actually, that's kind of working. And I'm not sure what that box is. I think that box is the range that you're seeing. I'm a little unclear.
It's the feathering. It's the feathering of that filter.
Yeah.
Right.
So you would want to, you play with your rightmost slider and then the feathering, and you should be able to get that to work.
So when I move this to the left, it's showing me the dark areas. It's masking out the dark areas, right?
Mhm.
Is that correct? So if I move
No,
that,
it's masking out the red areas. The red areas are what's going to be affected, and the black areas aren't. So
I increase the exposure a lot. So I want to decrease the exposure on the white areas and keep the black areas. But if this is red, then I think that's where I'm getting into trouble. It's like a double negative. It's like I'm subtracting an increase in exposure, and then I'm setting, yeah, that's where I'm getting into trouble.
yeah.
I guess I'm going to have to play with this.
Yeah, it's not quite as intuitive as I think we thought it might be. And what I'm starting to find, well, you're basically doing luminosity masking, and sometimes it might be something that would be better done in Photoshop over Lightroom, but
Yeah, I
What-
typically do. I have some good tools to do that, but I used to do it in Lightroom for a quick and dirty luminosity mask on one of the gradients, and it worked quite well. And
I use
so,
the luminosity mask fairly often in here, and it does work pretty well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if you just start with, forget the radio and just start with the luminosity mask?
well, let me go back and try that.
And I guess as a non-Lightroom user, my question is, instead of using the radio mask or gradient mask, can you just brush an area that you want to affect?
You can. I'm hesitant to do that. I think that Adobe has changed how they use it, but it used to be that the brush, the way that it stored it in the memory, is every brush stroke was stored in as a separate object. And so if you used a lot of brush strokes, it made
Your file
huge,
got huge. Yeah,
files. Yeah.
okay.
So if I do
It's got-
eliminate-
I was just gonna say, it's gotten much better now. They say with this new masking that the file sizes don't jump up and it doesn't get as laggy as it used to.
So my luminosity masks, I'm blocking out the lighter parts, right? The sky is mid-tone. And see, as I move this to the right, it gets smaller. If I move it to the right, to the left.
Yeah, but the mountains still have some red in it. When you go farther up, you can see keep going to the right, and you still see some red in there. Now try doing reducing your exposure once and see what happens.
Reducing the exposure. Yeah, it's acting on the snow, which I
Yeah.
don't want to do. So I would want to reduce the exposure there, and I'm just going to do it extreme. So, and then if I want to restrict that to just the center, would I do an add or a subtract? I think I would want to
Yeah.
subtract, because I'm subtracting from this luminosity mask just the area that I'm interested in. So I'm going to subtract a radial gradient, and I'm going to put the radial gradient just on the tip here. And I'm wondering if that gives me what I want.
yeah, see now.
Yeah, that
yeah,
subtracted from the mask.
Yeah.
So I should have done an add.
Right, so it's a matter of deciding what you want to affect first, and then doing that first mask, and then starting to do the rest. And that's the tricky part with it, and that's what took me a while to figure out, that there's sort of a path that you want to go through to make it work. See, and
Yeah.
if I was doing that, what I'd end up doing is selecting the sky and then inverting from the sky to the foreground. And that way, then you could adjust the mountains and everything, and that part works really well.
But that's the part with the luminosity mask. I don't want to operate on the entire mountain range. I just want to
Yeah,
operate on those little areas of snow to bring those down. And I think I'm going to have to resort to just doing it in Photoshop, because I can do it real easily in Photoshop.
yeah,
but
and sometimes, I mean, this is still limited. They've jumped it up quite a bit, and it's got some nice uses, but it could be something that you're just have to figure out the new pathways, and that's what I've been playing with mine, is what I'd use it for and when I want to jump into Photoshop, because the Photoshop one is so much better than what Lightroom can do.
Yeah.
For picking subjects and that, which we'll get into in a little bit here.
Yeah, and when you were talking about the tools that are on sale this weekend, I used Tony Kuiper that provides some wonderful tools for
Yeah.
doing luminosity masks. He has tools in there for doing a lot of things in Photoshop that are one button things that people might like. But Sean Bagshaw has done a bunch of videos to teach you how to do luminosity masks with Tony Kuiper's tools.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different, and I used to use luminosity masks, and with now what Photoshop can do, I'm not quite as interested in a luminosity mask, but some people like them and some don't. So, and I'm one that just, I've used a couple different people's that had some nice stuff, and I used Raya Pro for luminosity masks, and it worked pretty well.
What
I
was
just
it called?
found I wasn't using it that much.
What was it? Something Pro?
Raya Pro, RAYA Pro. I don't know what version they're up to. It's like 5 or 6 now. And it just it has a lot of the same things that Kuiper had, but he had even more add-ons to it, which I don't know. I don't think I actually put it into my latest version of Photoshop. We can look when I get in there. So, we'll get
I would
back to-
suggest you might want to try looking at some of the other videos on how to use the masking. I know Sean Biggs that did just a brief one. Blake Rudis did one, and these guys are pretty excited about it. Matt Kikowski did one, and Scott Kelby on his, if you belong to his program, his programs, he's got something on it. So
Are those
I think
you
I think
know?
all of those have, and if you just look for, just do search for it. There's a lot of YouTube stuff on the new masking tools.
All right,
Yep.
I'll do that. I'll make that my project for the next.
Yeah, what's hard is there's so many videos out there, but I mean, it's just amazing, you know, if you select the subject here for just getting the island, it does such a amazing job. It does not quite get the stuff in between the tree branches here, but it gets everything else. And what I like is once you have it, you know, you can invert to get to the other part and not to the tree. Now here you could fix this all up by just going in with the brush and getting it done. You know, you just would have to zoom in, and this would get to be a little putsy. But if you wanted to add to it,
You could use the
can use
luminosity mask and select the color, Jeff, and just drop that.
that might work too. I found the brush sort of works in that as long as you don't get into the green. But yeah, let's try that once. So if we go into the luminosity range, actually you could actually
The
go into
color, do the color. Now you
Yeah.
take your eyedropper and go into the blue.
Yeah,
Oh, that
Yeah.
worked really well.
yeah, that did that pretty well.
And then you got the refine thing where you can refine it over on the right-hand side.
Right.
I wonder if that would work for my mountain. I could probably click the white color of the snow.
Yeah, that would probably work for the mountain and even the colored ones. And you just, the nice part is you get sort of different layers and you can create additional masks for each section that you want. And that actually did, yeah, good suggestion, Ken. And then you can, you know, change it and do whatever you wanted to it, which would,
Boy, that Ken, he's not just another pretty face.
nope. he's been playing with this stuff and he's been watching a lot of Matt videos, I think. But
Well, like
so
I
you
said,
can-
there's a lot of good ones out there, and everybody is really hyped up on this because it really is actually, many of them are saying there's in many ways you don't have to go to Photoshop to do a lot of these masking things now, and a couple of them, and I'm not sure if it was Sean or Blake had kind of tips on when they still think they're going to need to go into Photoshop, and they explain what they would go into it for. But they gave fairly good demonstrations of what they would use it for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to see a lot of different ways to use it, just to refine certain sections of it, either, if it would be this that I wanted to get standing out more, or, darkening the water. And then if I wanted to create a new mask,
And you can name those things too, Jeff.
right.
So if you,
And I would end up, naming it, but I even found it does a nice job of selecting the sky, so that I could add, fix this color up of the sky if I wasn't happy with it or wanted to start doing my weird stuff to it. But you can really end up doing quite a bit to these. And yeah, you can go in here and rename it. And it's always worthwhile to name this stuff so that you can remember what it was. And then this one was,
I've been using this quite a bit, and sometimes when I'm lazy, the other beauty of these using this system now is you can use the eyeball, turning it on and off, and you can see real quickly what that filter did.
yep.
So it's really easy to see what it was you were trying to do if you didn't rename them all. And sometimes I'm not real good about always doing that.
Yeah. So
Now,
it's
one thing-
really
One thing
handy.
I didn't like about that though, Jim, was the fact that I use the history all the time. And I go back and forth to see how things are. And every time you click that eyeball, it put on and off, it puts another entry in the history. So if you turn it on and off 10 times, you'll have 10 entries in your history. I mean, it's a little thing, but
Mhm.
Oh yeah, show sky, hide chase,
yeah.
show and hide. Yeah.
I wish you could turn off putting that in the history, and I checked through preferences to see if they gave you a preference, and they didn't.
Yeah, I doubt that they do, because
The other way around that, of course, is to use the snapshot. It points where you like to get to. And that way you wouldn't have to go through the entire history list, which sometimes can get quite long. But then you would have your snapshots at different points.
yeah, that's a good use of
Yeah, if you
snapshot.
click that on and off, Jeff, right now, you'll see the like 10 different entries in your history. Just
Yeah.
on and off, and it'll say hide show, hide show. And I wish you could delete those from your history.
I think you
Well,
can.
You
Just go
can, you
back.
could.
You just go back to that step and start over again from there. And now if that won't be there, when he does the next step, it would automatically erase everything above it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do that. I do that. But if I've done something afterwards and go back and see, 20 entries there, you can't take them out without undoing what you wanted to do.
Yeah, but it's not taking up any space, but it does mean you have to sort of scroll, a lot more scrolling. You could see I did a lot of stuff to this one, but yeah, I'm just amazed at how good the the select subject or select sky actually does. I mean, with this bird, I could do quite a bit with it. And I found for me that I always do a lot of inverting because I want to do stuff with the background. So I can actually make that background a little darker, and I like to soften it up,
Yeah, I must
Drop the
admit, those are
text.
good features. They did a really good job with the
Yeah,
selecting object and selecting sky.
and then what I found that, you know, you can do a slight, uh, I don't want to add, I want to subtract with the gradient so that you could make it look a little more natural. So, but
Turn
it,
on
yeah,
the, I was gonna say, turn on the overlay so you can see what is actually masked. Oh, it's, oh,
Speaking
you
of
have to,
overlays,
oh,
I was
got
going to
a
say
bad
that
idea.
Blake had mentioned that instead of using red, he likes to use magenta. That's not a bad idea to switch that color because he said magenta doesn't show up in many things other than maybe a sky. And so he'll take that color and go over to magenta bright so that he can see what he's doing better.
Go all the way
Yeah.
to the right, Jeff, no, keep going to the right in the top thing.
There you go. And your eyedropper near the top of
Oh, yeah,
magenta.
yeah,
Just click
yeah.
there.
Let's see how that looks.
you have to, I think, yeah, you have to click on the mask that you want to show.
Yeah, there we
And then
go.
click on show overlay to show it.
Actually, you're right. That magenta does work a little better than red does.
Mhm.
Good tip.
Oh, I'll leave it there. Yep. So I thought we should see all this stuff because it really has a lot of possibilities, and as a person, and you know, you still get all your adjustments here. And when you are painting with a brush, you can have stuff where it will still ignore things, or you know, you keep the X in the area. But I'm finding it to be very helpful and something that I can work with and isolate things. So let's go to and show the same stuff here in Photoshop.
Yeah, I'm hoping they will add one of these days the ability to, with those masks and gradients, to have more control over individual colors, like they do with the HSL/color panel for the entire
Yeah.
photo. I wish they would add that to local adjustment,
Yeah,
because the only thing you can do with a local adjustment is to change. They added that hue bar. You can change the entire hue of the local adjustment. But you can't change one color. You can use the blue, the temperature slider to make it look more to cooler or warmer, more blue or not. But you can't get in and get a specific color, and I wish they would add that.
Well, you could use the mask under select color, and then you would only have that color, and then you could go ahead and change that single color. And then if you like in this case, let's say he selected the red, but there was some red on the trailer, he could subtract that red on the trailer and then just have the red of the car and then do whatever color changes he wished.
When you select a color like that, how wide is the range that they select? I know in Photoshop, you have to be careful.
I think the way this one works, if I remember right, if you take that eyedropper and click in one place, it will only give you that color that's under the eyedropper, but you can pull it and make like a box or a shape, and then he can get a wider range of color because it'll take anything in the box that he would have with that eyedropper.
Well, that's a good feature.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this case, you've got some dark reds on the side of the car and you've got some light
Right.
reds just underneath the windows. And
Why
so
don't you try that, Jeff? Go over to the make a mask, but put this under color range,
yeah.
and then
I'm
see if you can
running-
drag it with a with that eyedropper, and you should be able to get a box around. Because I know I haven't done this, but I saw them doing it with skies where they would take wider ranges of colors.
Well, I'll have to try it with a different file. This file got corrupted somehow and I don't know why.
You can also use multiple drops of your dropper. You can take multiple areas.
Yeah,
I forget what key you use on a Windows machine. It may be the Alt key. I'm not sure what it would be in a Mac system, but you can drop that dropper in more than one place.
yeah, you can do like, say if we wanted that one. Now it picked all that color. And if you wanted to, I believe, if you go to that one, you can pick that. See, what you could, now with this new one, I believe you could just go to either add and do color range again and pick that one. So now you've got, you know, this color range for the one and that color range for the other one. So you get quite a bit of control over changing it. Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
Wanting to do?
in more cases, like your car would have been a better example because you wouldn't want to change the grass and the car. So you'd normally stick to one area, Jeff. So if, you know, with your black car, if you want to change the black in the car, you can put your dropper in multiple locations in the black and then change that out with a different color. You wouldn't want to do two huge areas like you've
Right.
got.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, if you wanted to color range, you can do that.
And
Now
also
you'd have to,
you'd you'd have to subtract the whole top there.
yeah. Which you could just do by, now you wouldn't want to use color range. You could use either the brush tool or the linear gradient would work. Where you would bring it down like that. So now I think you would, oh, I'd have to bring that up. So yeah, now it should
Click on
be
show
that,
overlay so you can see what's selected.
yeah. So you can see that if now you could adjust this gradient so
Yeah,
that you
you'd want to
wouldn't,
make it really narrow to
yeah,
where you didn't have much of it and then move it down. But click on the show overlay to see what you're actually doing. So yeah, you've got
Okay,
quite
so
a bit of that fence.
yeah, you got all of the car, the part that you'd have to fix. Oh,
Move it
I know, you just could bring it down this way. So that would pretty much get it. Because now everything here, it's going to be subtracting. So you're only getting the car and underneath. So you can do quite a bit with it. So that color range is a handy one. Probably the simpler way to have done that. Let me trash all of these again.
You can hit
Could have
just the
been.
delete key too if you're, I think at least I've been able to do that where you just go to the
Okay.
filter, hit the delete key, and then that'll get rid of it really quick.
See, the simplest thing is, like, if you wanted to just change the car, would have been to pick the mask for the car.
How would you subtract the windows and tires though?
Right, yeah, and then you'd subtract the windows. And if you wanted to subtract some of this color stuff, actually, I'm thinking that you probably could then go into color range. Yeah, and just click on the car itself. And now I believe it just got rid of all this stuff.
But it added all the trees up at top.
Yeah,
Oh, because you had clicked on add, right? So anything of that color in the photo was added to the mask.
oh no, I clicked subtract. That's what I thought I did.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a little confused myself.
interesting. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, for some reason it added all that, because usually what I found is you start with this as the main mask and then you're adding and subtracting here. So I thought I just hit subtract to get rid of like this stuff.
Oh, but in the history, it says add color range. So I think you added.
Oh, okay, I must have hit the wrong one.
Hit the history just before the add color range on add subtract.
Here, we'll go back to add
That's
subject. And then,
Select the mask. Yeah, you have to tell it what mask to show and then
Yeah.
subtract.
now if I hit subtract and color range, if we hit this,
Well, it subtracted all the black, I think, which included the car.
yeah. All right, let's back up.
I'm gonna have to dig
Now
into
we're,
it a little.
When you get it to subtract like you just did, it'd be interesting to try the invert. And the easy way to get to that invert is just over on your panel there on the far right, right about where you're right underneath where the masking tool is. It says invert. You can click that and see if that inverts it for you. Now see if that would do just the black car. I don't know.
yeah.
That's still
it's
taking
still-
too much again. It's coming
Yeah,
back.
it's still taking too much there. Well, sort of interesting thing to play with.
Yeah, definitely a learning curve on this new stuff. I'm gonna
Yeah,
take some of your videos, Jim, that you recommended and go through them this week.
I
Yeah.
will say that I found this to be a really more powerful than it used to be for me now in Lightroom. This is actually a really good system. I've found it to work very well.
Well, as long as I can do what I used to do, you know, to pull a gradient or a radial mask and then click on the luminosity and show only the bright parts, only the black parts. That was pretty simple before. And I'm sure they haven't gotten rid of the ability to do that. It's just a matter of figuring out how.
well, that one got messed up.
Yeah, this red car is a good example because it's got a little red piece on that bus on the right side. So you could,
Yeah, I was gonna use it, but the file got corrupted from when I worked on it yesterday. I had a Photoshop error yesterday.
try
Um,
creating a virtual copy. You know
Yeah,
how to do-
no, it doesn't want to work on any of them because the
Oh,
virtual copy works off of this one. And I could swear I had more than just one of that car, but for some reason, and I wanted something with multiple cars or figurines. So let me just see if I can find something. Just because I think the Photoshop stuff that is available now. Yeah, this would probably work.
I'm gonna switch. Yeah.
Jeffrey, how long do you keep backups? If you, I keep mine for a few days, so you might, if you lost that file, you might want to go back and see if you can get it out of your backup before it disappears.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna end up having to try, but it's, I have to go to my cloud backup because of the system I'm using. I switched all my photo files to a RAID system. And so whenever something gets changed on the OneDrive, it changes it on the other. So I have to actually go back to my older backups to get to it. But the nice part with the masking stuff in Photoshop, or the selection part that I found, is that
Right, what are you doing?
when you click on it, the way it can pick out whatever subject you want it to just by hovering over it. So if I wanted just this car, all I got to do is hover over it and click on it, and it makes that selection. And then I can, if I hold my shift key, of course, I can keep adding to the selection. And I found that's a really handy one for being able to pick out different sections. If I wanted, even like for me, if I was going to get rid of, let's say the select, and wanted to get rid of that person, a lot of times what I'll do is, if I didn't want to get into the wall or something like that, now I could just clone over. And what's nice is I like making that selection, and then I can deselect, and now he's gone, and I'm not getting into the wall or any of the other parts. So this new selection tool, which also lets you, you know, select your subject and that, but just hovering over it really is sort of nice, a new nice feature to see. So you can pick whatever section you want for subjects. And the selection types that it can do is really pretty nice. You also have that other stuff in the camera raw filter section. You can do all the other select masking that you have in photo and in Lightroom. So you also have that capability, but this part here I found is just really amazing how well it can just pick out certain subjects. And then of course you can refine it once you do get it selected. Say you wanted just the car here. Then of course you can go into the select and mask and be able to refine that. And that's what I tend to go into when I'm doing, you know, like the race cars and that, where I want to get rid of the windshield. This one I wouldn't do it too much, but I like this too, because then I can, when I hit the OK button, I just create a new layer with a layer mask so that I've got the car all by itself. And then I can do things to the background if I wanted to. If I say I wanted to.
Yeah, you got to be careful though about creating multiple raster layers like that. When you have a bunch of them, you increase the file size, you double the file size.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you can get into 1 or 2 gigabytes. And a lot of people have said, and I've said this myself, is memory's cheap, but I've got a 14 terabyte drive and I'm worried about getting full. So at some point it just gets too big.
Yeah, well, I'm working with a 40 terabyte drive, so I don't worry quite as much about the files. I do try to keep them under, well, this one's already up to 526 megabytes just by creating this extra one. But you could, after a while, you could just rasterize that layer to get rid of the mask and get rid of a lot of the sizing. with
Another
it.
thing is you can cut and just, you know, instead of masking it, you can copy that particular part that's selected and then have a raster layer with a small amount on it, which keeps the size
Right.
down too.
But I like it because I can do things like with the flowers and that, where I would blur the background and keep just one straight. Normally I wouldn't do it just on this background, but I would normally do a mask or duplicate it and have a mask so that I could have some of this sharp. But it's sort of nice how quick and simple this works. Shut you off. All right. Let me see. Let me go to a different one here that I have. Let's see.
I was just playing a little bit here on a different computer, which is why I was listening to what you were doing. But there is another section in there which, once you've applied, when we were doing that thing with the colors, and then colors would come, or like the blacks of the trees would show up with the blacks of the cars. There is a way of clicking on that filter once you've built it, and then you can say, apply it to the mask that's already been there. So it's sort of like a Venn diagram where you do one thing here and you do one thing here, and then it only takes wherever the overlap is. And so you
Oh, okay.
can make those things only look at, let's say, the blacks of the car. It's a little harder to do, and because I don't have share the screen on this computer, it wouldn't work for me. But you can make that happen. But it's play around with that a little bit when you create your second mask. Click the three dots, and it'll say something like interact with another filter, and then it will put the two together.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that the
Oh, you can do an intersection, right?
Correct. And so then
Yeah,
it's like,
that's-
say, it's sort of like the old Venn diagrams that people used to do with, circle A with circle B, and then you'd put the two together, and wherever they overlap is what it would use for its actual masking process. But
that's
you have to
this
build the second mask first, at least that I could see, and then you can make that happen.
Okay. I'm wondering if with this intersect mask width, and if you did a brush.
Right. Well, if you did it that way, yes. I mean, I did it the way you did it, where you did two filters, and I know that I played around with that and I got it to work, but I couldn't remember how, but that's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still, like I said, I'm still in the beginning, and I watched Matt Klaskowski's videos, but he didn't get into it super deep yet. I think he has now, and I just haven't had a chance to play with it. But yeah, there are so many different things.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I saw that on Out of Chicago. Some people were talking about how they really liked it. And I had not done that where I had interacted with masks before, but they showed how that was done. And it's very, like I said, this is really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you can do all kinds of things.
Yeah. I want to play with this area a little bit more. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So yeah, it's really sort of amazing what it can do. And I like what you can do too in Photoshop with take it. I was going to bring this one in. Yep, there it goes. Because, here you can just see how it's selecting certain parts. I'm not sure why. Usually it doesn't grab the stem. The stem must be just sharp enough that it grabs it. But then using this select and mask, you can fix it up pretty well. wonder, I really like the suggestion of going to magenta. Let's see. 'Cause that does tend to show up a little better.
No, that's thanks to Blake Rudis. He usually
Yeah.
plays around with these things like crazy before he talks about them. And
Yeah, I've been listening to him a little bit, and I haven't lately. Let's I get that a little bigger so that we can get the. Come on. It's supposed to go minus, not plus. You hold down your option key, you can make this brush go minus. Yeah, it's better. But sort of nice to be able to pick out the flowers, and then you could drop a sky in if you wanted to. Easy enough. But or it's a nice way to just take the background, and I usually duplicate that layer, and then you can need to turn it on for it to work, but you know, you wanted to blur it. So yeah, it's all the new masking stuff. It's just made life so much quicker. Click on it too fast. Must have just Gaussian. There we go. Just to make it. Although I would probably just here, I would look at changing the sky, but it's just so amazing how sharp of an edge that it's getting now in picking this subject out. You can see a few things where it's missing it, but on the whole, it's really making life so much quicker and easier than what it used to be. Let's see. There really wasn't that much that they added to Photoshop that was new. I do suggest, I found that the first version, the first two versions of Photoshop were giving me problems, and they brought out a new update just the other day, and it's now making Photoshop work a little better. But so that's about what I had. And anybody have any other things they want to talk about here? We got a few minutes left.
I guess
But,
not.
yeah, it's a quiet group. It's a Thanksgiving. Everybody's still half awake from turkey. I've had turkey.
Never know,
2
maybe
days in
everyone's in a
row now.
diabetic coma.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I just am in the process. I've switched everything over to a RAID system, and it works pretty nice for keeping duplicates. The only problem I'm seeing with it is that when something goes wrong with the first disk on the RAID, the backup disk, of course, is copied identical to the first. So so like this file here that for some reason has gotten corrupted, I'll have to go back to my old backups to be able to pull it, or actually I can pull it from my Backblaze backup.
How
So that's something.
long do you keep your backups? When you said your old backups, how far back do you go?
Well, my old backup is a month. That one's a month old. So the Backblaze, actually every time something changes, it keeps it for a month as well. So I've got a month that I can go backwards in. It's probably one thing that I'm a little worried about playing with the RAID, but I've got 2 RAID boxes right now that are working, and this is the first time I had a problem yesterday. I was using an older, not just one version older of Photoshop, and it would not save. It started to save the file, but it wouldn't save it completely. And I think that's what ended up messing up this file. And we'll see what I can do to replace it. I've got it in a couple of spots, so, but could have swore that I had more than one version of it. Now there's my second copy. No, but that's a virtual copy. I had more than one version of this, and so I can't figure out where the rest of them went, because all of these are virtual copies. Well, wait,
Well, like what you told us, Jeff, always to have multiple backups.
Yep. Let's see if this one's. Yeah, and there's I knew I had another version of it. Let's see. There we go. Now it's working, because now you can see what I like is that I could pick out all these different sections. And I was amazed at how well it did the car. It's just a little bit down in here that it didn't do a good job with.
We can't see your screen because you're not sharing.
Oh, I'm not sharing. Oh, let's get back to that.
You're just talking to yourself.
Yeah, sharing
I'm
is
talking to
caring.
myself. Don't I do that well. I forgot I turned it off. So you've got
That's the
nice
Elks motto.
Yeah. So what I like is that you've got all the different sections that you can grab here besides the car. Here is where it didn't do quite as good of a job, but I can, create just a extra layer of the car. And what I like doing then is being able to, I always work with a duplicate background layer, but this is one of the few times that I end up working with Topaz, because I like Topaz for changing my backgrounds out and doing, sort of weird stuff with the backgrounds. You know me, I don't do anything natural. So if I go to something like that, actually, let's apply that one. And add another one. But yeah, it's sort of fun to be able to just play and change the backgrounds. Now, a lot of times, you can, what I'll end up doing is, and I created it in, oh, that's interesting. I can grab a tire. I hadn't seen that one before, where you could get to
Pretty
the
smart.
specifics. That can be handy. But
The one thing I like about the layers in Photoshop, for that background layer there, you can set the opacity down. And you can't
Yep.
do that in Lightroom.
Yeah,
To get less or more. You could have done it really, really strong and then lessen the opacity to get it just where you want.
yeah. Yeah, and I do that, and even in here, what I probably would have done is, I don't like the busy background, so I just would, but I like the grass. So I would probably just do, whoop. Went a little over. Jeez, my mouse is going all over the place today. Now let's try that again. All right. But yeah, I like to get rid of the distracting background, so I would probably end up adding just a sky to this. Yeah. So I could just delete that out and then fill it with a sky, which I had actually a sky that I liked down here. My problem is some of my files are too big.
Well, the Photoshop replace sky would have done that too.
Yeah,
If
I
you were
could
looking
have
for
done it
file.
that way, and it's just a little trickier with
Oh,
it.
nice. Yeah, you can do a lot more with Photoshop than of this kind of stuff.
Come on. This worked better the other day. That's a little better. So yeah, you can add a nice sky, and then I tend to like to, I could merge these two together and then rasterize it and then I can do different things to it, or actually even turn it into a smart object. That works a little better, because then I can run that through a filter. Say,
You could also put a mask on that layer to mask out the area underneath the car and
Yeah.
get that wheel back.
so now I can do my weird stuff. Where's the one that I like? I gotta start creating favorites again. That's a little different. Actually, Galactic, I think was. There we go. Let's use that one. I don't know. This is what you call playing around to kill time.
Yeah. You can use a healing brush to run down that line to get rid of that line.
Yeah, actually, I would probably, because it's part of some of the stuff that. Starting to use up my memory here on the computer, I can see.
I think the bandwidth for the Zoom it takes a lot of bandwidth too, because my Lightroom
Yep.
was being really, really slow.
Now we're getting to. No, I don't understand why it brought it back into Topaz. For some reason I lost the smart filter. Huh. That's weird. Slate plans. All right, well, we'll just skip that. So you can do a lot in Photoshop, but the selection tool is what I really like, is that how well it can select that stuff and give you something a little bit more than what you started with. Don't save. All right. Save. All right. Well, I see we're at 12 noon. Time for everybody to find their next turkey fix. If you have any left, I have a ton left. I'm going to be eating turkey and stuffing for the next 3 or 4 days. So I guess that's it. Oh, one thing I was going to mention, for December, we're not going to have a meeting, considering that December 25th is the 4th Saturday of the month.
No big
Oh,
deal.
Man,
You know,
Just do it.
unless everybody wants me to do it, I will be glad to do it, because I really don't have that much going on on Christmas Day. But I
pack
figure
our Christmas presents.
yeah, we could all show Christmas presents that day. But so we'll skip December. You will still get an announcement for December, because I don't have a way to turn that off. But we won't meet in December, and we'll meet in January. I know,
January will be the day before the chapter meeting. So
yeah, right. So that will give me a busy day on Saturday and part of Sunday. So
Jeff, I don't get email